You weren't expecting that message, were you? After everything, the silence, the confusion, the way they walked away like the connection didn't matter, you finally started putting yourself back together, slowly, painfully, piece by piece, and then suddenly they show up again, but not with accountability, not with clarity, not with "I made a mistake and I want to fix this." No, they come back softer, safer, almost casual. "Hey, I still care about you. I think we should stay friends." And for a second, your heart pauses because part of you feels relief. At least they didn't forget you. At least you still matter. But another part of you feels something heavier, something harder to name. Because deep down, you know this isn't what you wanted. You didn't invest your emotions, your time, your vulnerability just to become something smaller in their life. And yet here you are, standing at a crossroads, wondering if saying yes will keep them close or slowly destroy what's left of you. Here's the part most people won't say out loud. When an avoidant ex asks for friendship after dumping you, it's rarely about building something healthy. It's about easing their own internal discomfort. They don't come back because they've suddenly become emotionally available or ready to meet you where you are. They come back because losing you completely creates a kind of emotional tension they don't know how to handle. You were a source of stability, validation, familiarity, and when that disappears, it leaves a gap. But instead of stepping into that discomfort and growing through it, they look for a safer middle ground, something that lets them feel connected without feeling vulnerable. That friendship offer, it's the perfect compromise for them. They get access to your presence, your energy, your warmth, without having to face the depth, responsibility, or emotional exposure that a real relationship requires. And if you're not careful, you'll mistake that small offering as a sign of love, when in reality, it's just a way for them to stay comfortable. But let's bring this back to you, because this is where it gets real. Can you truly be just friends with someone who broke your heart? Not in theory, not in a maybe one day kind of way, but right now, in this exact moment, can you sit across from them, talk casually, laugh, hear about their life, maybe even watch them move on someday and feel nothing? Or are you secretly hoping that staying close will reopen the door? That if you're patient enough, understanding enough, low pressure enough, they'll realize what they lost and come back for real this time? Because that hope, as quiet as it is, will shape everything. It will make you tolerate things you shouldn't tolerate. It will make you interpret breadcrumbs as effort, mixed signals as progress, silence as something meaningful instead of what it actually is. And before you know it, you're no longer healing, you're waiting. Waiting in a situation that looks like friendship on the surface, but underneath, it's still attachment, still longing, still unfinished. And this is where the imbalance begins to grow. Because while you're trying to navigate your emotions, trying to stay composed, trying not to show how much it still affects you, they feel lighter. Not because they don't care at all, but because this arrangement works in their favor. They get to release the pressure of the relationship while still keeping you within reach. They can check in when they feel like it, pull away when it feels too close, and never fully commit to either losing you or choosing you. It creates a dynamic where you're emotionally engaged, but they're only partially invested. And that gap is where confusion lives. It's where overthinking starts. It's where you begin to question your worth, wondering why someone who says they care about you doesn't choose you fully. But the truth is, it's not about your worth, it's about what they're capable of giving. And right now, what they're offering is a version of connection that keeps them safe, not a version that builds something real. So before you say yes to that friendship, you need to understand what it might actually cost you. Because every conversation, every small moment of connection, every time they reach out and pull you back in, it resets your healing. It keeps the emotional door open, just enough for you to stay attached, but not enough for you to feel secure. You start living in the in-between, not fully with them, not fully free from them. And that space, it drains you slowly. You deserve clarity, not confusion. You deserve someone who chooses you without hesitation, not someone who negotiates your place in their life after already walking away. Saying no to friendship doesn't make you cold or unforgiving. It means you're choosing your own healing over their comfort. It means you're recognizing that sometimes the only way to truly move forward is to stop accepting roles that require you to shrink. And the hardest truth of all, if they really wanted you in their life in a meaningful way, they wouldn't ask you to settle for less than what you once had. They would rise to meet you where you are now. And that realization can hit harder than the breakup itself because it forces you to see the situation without the illusion you were holding on to. It's no longer about maybe they'll come back or maybe this is just a phase. It becomes clear that what they're offering now is intentional. This is the version of connection they feel most comfortable with. And the painful part is, if you accept it, you're not slowly rebuilding something. You're agreeing to a dynamic where your needs come second to their comfort. You start adjusting yourself without even realizing it. You speak less about what you feel. You act more chill, more understanding, more patient, not because that's who you truly are, but because you're trying not to lose the little bit of access you still have to them. And in that process, you begin to lose something much more important, your emotional honesty. What makes this even more confusing is that they won't always act distant. There will be moments, small, unexpected moments, where they feel warm again. They might open up a little, laugh like they used to, say something that reminds you of how things once were. And just like that, your hope comes rushing back in. You start thinking, see, it's still there. They still feel something, but what you're experiencing isn't consistency, it's contrast. And contrast is powerful because it makes even the smallest bit of affection feel amplified. It keeps you emotionally hooked, constantly trying to read between the lines, trying to figure out what it all means. But real connection doesn't make you decode every interaction. It doesn't leave you questioning where you stand. What you're being given here are fragments, not commitment, glimpses, not clarity. And slowly, without noticing it at first, you begin to revolve around those fragments. Your mood starts depending on their responses. A message from them can lift your entire day, and silence from them can undo your peace completely. You tell yourself you're okay with just being friends, but your emotional state tells a different story. Because deep down, this isn't neutral for you. It matters. They matter. And when something matters that much, it can't exist in a space that lacks stability without affecting you. You might even start blaming yourself, thinking maybe you're too sensitive, maybe you're expecting too much, maybe this is just how things are now, and you should be grateful they're still in your life at all. But that mindset slowly lowers your standards in a way that feels invisible, until one day you realize you've accepted a version of love that no longer feels like love. This is where you have to ask yourself a question that most people avoid. Not, do they care about me? But is what they're offering enough for me? Because those are two very different things. Someone can care about you and still not be capable of loving you in the way you need. Someone can miss you and still choose distance over closeness. And if you base your decisions only on whether they care, you'll keep yourself tied to a situation that never fully meets you. But if you shift the focus to your own needs, your need for consistency, for emotional safety, for clarity, it changes everything. It forces you to see that accepting less isn't a form of patience, it's a form of self-abandonment. And the longer you stay in that space, the harder it becomes to recognize what a healthy connection should actually feel like. So here's the truth that might be difficult to accept, but it will set you free if you really let it sink in. You don't need to stay in their life to prove your value. You don't need to accept friendship to show that you're mature, understanding, or strong. Real strength is being able to walk away from something that feels good in small moments but hurts you in the long run. It's choosing peace over proximity. It's understanding that closure doesn't come from staying connected to the person who hurt you. It comes from the boundaries you create afterward. And yes, walking away completely might feel like losing them all over again, but what you gain in return is something you've been slowly losing this entire time. Your sense of self, your clarity, your emotional stability. And once you fully step out of that in-between space, you finally give yourself the chance to experience something real again, something that doesn't require you to question where you stand, something that doesn't ask you to shrink, something that meets you fully without conditions. And when you finally begin to step back, when you stop replying as quickly, stop engaging as deeply, stop being as emotionally available, you'll notice something shift, and it might confuse you at first. Suddenly they seem more present. They might reach out more often, ask more questions, even show hints of the connection you always wanted. And for a moment it feels like things are finally changing, like maybe this is what it took for them to realize your value. But you have to be careful here, because this shift isn't always growth, it's often reaction. When you were always there, they felt safe keeping you at a distance. But when you start pulling your energy back, it disrupts that comfort. It creates space. And avoidants struggle with space just as much as they struggle with closeness. So they move toward you again, not necessarily because they're ready to choose you fully, but because they feel you slipping away. And if you don't recognize this pattern, you'll get pulled right back into the same cycle, just with a different intensity. This is where emotional discipline becomes everything. Not because you don't feel anything, but because you feel so much. You feel the pull to respond, to lean in, to believe that this time is different. You want to trust the warmth when it shows up because it feels real. And to be fair, parts of it are real. But real doesn't always mean sustainable. Real doesn't always mean consistent. And if you base your decisions only on how something feels in the moment, you'll keep getting caught in emotional waves that never lead to solid ground. Discipline means pausing before you react. It means asking yourself, has anything actually changed? Or does it just feel different right now? It means protecting the version of you that is trying to heal, even when another part of you wants to go back to what's familiar. Because sometimes the hardest thing isn't letting go of them, it's staying committed to yourself when they come back in a softer form. And the truth is, healing from this kind of connection isn't just about missing them, it's about detaching from the role you played in their life. The one who understood them, who gave them space, who stayed patient, who tried to love them in a way that felt safe for them, even when it wasn't enough for you. That role becomes part of your identity, and letting go of it can feel like losing a part of yourself. You might wonder, if I'm not that person anymore, then who am I? And that's where growth begins, not in holding on to who you were for them, but in rediscovering who you are without them. Someone who doesn't have to overextend to feel valued. Someone who doesn't have to decode mixed signals to feel connected. Someone who can receive love without chasing it. But to reach that version of yourself, you have to be willing to release the version that kept settling for less. There's also a deeper layer to this that most people overlook. Staying friends with someone who broke your heart can quietly reinforce the belief that your boundaries are negotiable. But even after being hurt, you'll still show up, still give access, still make space for them in your life. And while that might come from a place of love or understanding, it teaches the wrong lesson to them and to yourself. It tells them they can have parts of you without earning the whole of you. And it tells you that your pain isn't enough of a reason to step away. But your pain matters. Your emotional experience matters. And honoring that doesn't make you weak, it makes you aligned. Because boundaries aren't about punishing the other person. They're about protecting your own peace. They're about saying, I care about myself enough to not stay where I'm not fully valued. So if you're standing in that moment right now, reading their message, hearing their voice, feeling that familiar pull to keep them in your life in any way you can, just pause for a second, not to overthink, not to suppress how you feel, but to really listen to yourself. Not the part of you that's afraid of losing them, but the part of you that knows what you deserve. The part of you that felt the pain when they walked away. The part of you that is still trying to heal. Because that version of you deserves a decision that supports their growth, not one that keeps them stuck. And maybe that decision isn't easy. Maybe it hurts more in the moment than saying yes ever would. But in the long run, it creates something you haven't had in a while. Clarity, freedom, space to actually move forward. And one day when you look back on this moment, you won't regret choosing yourself. You'll wonder why you ever thought you had to settle for anything less. And even after you make that decision, even after you choose distance, choose yourself, choose to step out of that confusing in-between space, it doesn't mean everything suddenly feels okay. This is the part people don't prepare you for. The silence that follows can feel heavier than the mixed signals ever did. Because at least before, there was something, some contact, some interaction, some reminder that they were still there. Now it's just you, your thoughts, your emotions, your memories, and they don't come in neatly organized waves, they hit unexpectedly. A song, a late night thought, a random moment in your day, and suddenly you're right back in it, wondering if you made the right choice. This is where most people feel tempted to go back, not because it was healthy, but because it was familiar. But healing isn't about choosing what feels familiar. It's about choosing what actually sets you free, even if it feels uncomfortable at first. There will be moments where your mind tries to rewrite the story. It will focus on the good parts, the connection, the laughter, the way they made you feel seen in certain moments, and it will quietly downplay the confusion, the inconsistency, the emotional distance that left you questioning everything. This isn't because you're weak, it's because your mind is trying to protect you from pain by holding on to what felt meaningful. But healing requires honesty, not selective memory. You have to be willing to remember the full picture, not just who they were at their best, but who they were when it mattered most, because that's the version that defines the relationship, not the potential you saw or the moments you hoped would last. And the more honest you are with yourself, the less power those memories will have over you. And somewhere in this process, something subtle but powerful begins to shift. You stop checking your phone as often, stop wondering what they're doing, stop imagining conversations that will never happen. It's not that you suddenly don't care at all, it's that the intensity starts to fade. The emotional grip loosens. You begin to feel moments of peace that aren't interrupted by thoughts of them. And at first that might feel strange, even a little empty, because you were so used to the emotional highs and lows that came with that connection. But that calm you're starting to feel, that's what stability looks like. That's what it feels like to no longer be emotionally pulled in different directions. And the more you allow yourself to sit in that calm, the more you realize how draining that old dynamic actually was. Then comes the part where your perspective truly changes. You start seeing things you couldn't see before. Not because they changed, but because you finally stepped far enough away to view the situation clearly. You begin to recognize the patterns, the cycles, the moments where you ignored your own needs just to keep the connection alive. And instead of blaming yourself, you start understanding yourself. You see that you were trying to love, trying to hold on, trying to make something work that meant a lot to you. But you also see that love isn't supposed to feel like constant uncertainty. It isn't supposed to make you question your place in someone's life, and once you truly understand that, something inside you settles, not in a way that feels like giving up, but in a way that feels like letting go with clarity. And eventually, you reach a point where their presence or absence no longer controls your emotional state. You can think about them without feeling pulled back in. You can remember what you shared without wanting to return to it. And most importantly, you stop seeing their friendship offer as something valuable you lost and start seeing it for what it really was, a version of connection that asked you to accept less than you deserved. And that's when everything comes full circle. Because the same message that once made you hesitate, made you overthink, made you feel torn, would no longer have the same effect on you now. Not because you stopped caring completely, but because you started valuing yourself more. And that's the real shift. Not in them, not in the past, but in you. And once you reach that place, you don't just move on, you move forward with a deeper understanding of what you will and will not accept again.